Hi, my name is Jackie Skrynski. I am in my studio in Newburgh, New York, right next to Ann Street Gallery. It's about 300 square feet. There's 8 of us in this area in Ann Street. The walls don't go all the way up to the ceiling, so we have to be very considerate of each other in terms of noise, and there are no fumes allowed in this area. There's no ventilation. We don't have daylight, and I don't have daylight in the studio. I have some special lamps. This is my favorite piece of furniture in my studio, which is my pallet cart. It's a heavy duty metal cart. It's not super big. And then I just have this giant piece of glass that's painted white on one side. And that's my palette. But I like it because it's so big. I can mix my paint, have my medium, my brushes, everything there. And then you can see I have this very, very old rickety easel that I use that does the trick. I knew I wanted to be an artist since I was a little kid. Like I always drew, always liked it. And I think as probably isn't a surprise, I also was really into nature. So I was like, oh, maybe I want to do something related to medical illustration or illustration related to nature or be a paleontologist or something like that. But no, it ended up with art. I'm also, I'm really interested in creative writing, but I just knew that I needed to be an artist in order to be a happy person. And so I committed to it. I've done a lot of other things to make a living, but I have never not made art. I look at a lot of different kinds of artists. Obviously, I'm looking at some Flemish and 17th century still life painting. That's a pretty big influence in the way that I'm depicting my work. So I do like a lot of old painting, but I'm also looking like contemporary artists in terms of this most recent body of work. I just love the work of Inka Ezenhai. She's done different things, but she has recently done some very beautiful paintings of flowers. And I love the Robert Mapplethorpe photographs of flowers. I'm interested in that sort of erotic or sensual idea of form. They're very much about beauty. When I was going to grad school, beauty was almost like a bad word, like you had to be, to make something because it was beautiful was, I don't know, it just wasn't cool. And now maybe because I'm older, but I just feel like it should be a daily practice. And I think that's why people have plants in their houses, like to just experience that beauty and symmetry. And I think it's really important. And Robert Mapplethorpe was into beauty. For most of my professional career, I've made really large charcoal drawings, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. That's what I've done in the past. But even though they're in a different medium, the themes of my work have been very consistent, where I'm interested in breaking down what I see as an erroneous perception that we're somehow different than nature or somehow separate from nature. So that's a through line in all my work. I take daily walks in the woods, and that's where I get a lot of my inspiration. This work from a few years ago was in the Hudson Valley Imprint Show at Ann Street Gallery last year. It's called The Grail because it was made at a place called The Grail that I walk through almost every day. This is depicting dead grass in the wintertime, and it's very much kind of about that sort of tangle and netting of the grass, but embedded within the grass are different things. There's some smiles embedded in the grass. The idea was kind of this sense of joy and communion with nature. And I think that communion with nature is seen as both something that is to consume, but also to be consumed. So there is that sort of that suggestion of decay. So this is the first piece in the body of work that I've been working on for about 2, 3 years. This is called Acorn Root. I hike a lot at Black Rock Forest. I was hiking and I noticed this really, really bright red acorn shoot. So it was cracked open, it was red, there was this protruding root, it was very phallic looking, it was kind of weird looking. I just love that stuff. Like if it's a little unsettling, a little weird, then it's usually right up my alley. So I took some photographs and I thought, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do about it. But then later, eventually I made this painting. It's a chestnut acorn, and it's actually a really wonderful native species. One of the things that nature does in my relationship with nature is that it often gives me some kind of guidance when I'm looking at big transitions in life that may be causing me some anxiety. This most recent work is looking at the big transitions of birth and death. And so, in terms of this poppy bloom, if you are familiar with poppies, they have this really bristly sepal kind of bud. It also is a little sexual looking. It swells and then it pops. I don't even know if it makes a noise. I'm guessing it pops, and that's how the name came about. And then the leaf that's inside of it is, all wrinkled up. It's been folded up inside this bud, and it slowly unravels. And of course, when I'm looking at it, I'm like, God, that looks like a tongue. I mean, that's kind of weird looking. And it has like this very distinct vascular structure. Certainly for me, and I'm assuming kind of for everyone, that they can see a correlation between flesh and the flower petal. Birth seems to often be a struggle, and conversely, death often seems to be a release or a relaxation or a fold. And that also is really, really beautiful. And so this is based on the cyclamen plants that were slowly dying, the blooms that were slowly dying and sort of fading and falling. I'm always inspired by the form and the beauty of whatever it is that I'm painting, even if it's a little unsettling and maybe a little weird looking. So I've always loved these seed pods. I've seen them when I've been on my walks and I've collected them. I've even made ornaments out of them. And it wasn't until I made this painting that I looked up, tried to figure out what it was. I had no idea where it came from. And I found out it is the seed pod for a tree of heaven, which is perhaps one of the most problematic invasive species that we have in the Northeast. I'm responding to this as something beautiful. I'm responding to the form and the color. I want to make a painting of it. I have that desire to make a painting of it. But then I'm also recognizing, as I learn about it, I'm recognizing that it is something that is also a threat, which I find is an interesting place to be in terms of subject. So why care about invasive species? Why should we care? I mean, aren't we as humans the most damaging species to the planet by far? Like, what gives us the right to kill some other living thing that's in the ecosystem? So this was my question. We can have plants from somewhere outside of North America and they behave themselves, but invasive species are ones that, for whatever reason, overpopulate and create monocultures and outcompete natives. So in outcompeting natives, they hurt biodiversity, and biodiversity is the key to a healthy ecosystem.
This program is made possible in part through the support of New York State Council on the Arts, Orange County Government, Shapiro's Furniture, and from donations from people like you. Please consider making a donation today at www.ocartscouncil.org. Thank you.